Who's our translator today? Okay. We're getting things in order over here. In about a minute, we'll be ready to begin. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The discussion for this evening's topic is centered on Srila Gopal Guru Goswami. The inspiration for this topic has to do with some important teachings on the chanting of the holy name. As you're hearing this very interesting history of a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, you... Go ahead. Please pay special attention to the lessons about chanting of japa. Many of you have been to Mayapur. Mayapur is very proximate to China and is a very nice place to visit, a holy dham. Historically, Mayapur and Jagannath Puri have a very strong spiritual connection. In Jagannath Puri, there's the celebrated deity of Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra. And every year in the summer, there's a wonderful Rath Yatra festival in Puri, and many devotees from all of Bengal go to attend. As you know, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent half of his life, or 24 years of his life, primarily residing in Jagannath Puri.
球上的一半的时间都是在一半当中特别多的大部分的时间都是在加拿大的土里度过的，也就是24年在那里度过了。
Where he stayed while residing in Jagannath Puri is a very small room called Gambhira.
在加拿大的土里的时候，他居住在 Gambhira 这个神庙当中的一个非常小的屋子里。
Very close to the place where Lord Chaitanya spent his years in Puri is where this deity is of Gopal Guru Goswami.
那么离着主切他那么哈帕布在土里所居住的地方非常近的地方，有其他 Gopal Guru Goswami 他的塑像。
Notice the Vaishnav tilak that he's wearing.
我们大家注意，普通的去了 Gopal Guru Goswami 他的前额上涂的 tilak。
His tilak is a little different than our tilak. The mark on his forehead was made by the footprint of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And since his time, the disciples and followers in the line of Gopal Guru Goswami keep the same Vaishnav tilak.
那么自从那以后，刚才翻译的出现了一个小漏洞，就是施拉 Gopal Guru Goswami 前额上的这两条线是主切他那么哈帕布莲花足印印在上面的。自从他之后的使徒奉献者的使徒程序，那么他们都涂着这样的 tilak。
A very nice way to begin discussing the life of Gopal Guru Goswami is to describe his spiritual master.
我们在开始描述施拉 Gopal Goswami 的生平之前，很好的一个开端就是去讲述他的灵性导师。
There's a murti of his spiritual master, Vikreshwara Pandita, that looks very much like Gopal Guru.
我们在这里可以看到，施拉 Gopal Guru Goswami 的灵性导师 Vikreshwara Pandita 这尊塑像看上去跟他的塑像非常相像。
This is a murti of Vikreshwara Pandit at Radhakund in Vrindavan.
这 Vikreshwara Pandita 的这尊塑像是 Vrindavan Radhakund 那里的塑像。
According to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vikreshwara Pandit is one of the 4 essential forms of the Lord manifest in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, that of Aniruddha.
那么根据 Chaitanya Charitamrita 都有主 Chaitanya 生平当中所描述的 Vikreshwara Pandita 是主 Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 的主要的同流之一，而 Vikreshwara Pandita 他同时也是4重扩展成员之一。
Just like in Lord Ramachandra's pastimes, there are 4 brothers.
就像是在主 Ramachandra 的消逝观当中有4位兄弟。
And according to Srimad Bhagavatam, these 4 brothers are members of the Chaturvyuha.
而根据圣典摩伽瓦坛的描述，这4位兄弟就是Chaturvyuha 4重扩展。
The names in the spiritual realm of these Chaturvyuha are Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha.
在灵性世界 Chaturvyuha 4重扩展的名字分别是 Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna 和 Aniruddha。
Lord Ramachandra and Lakshman were Vasudeva and Sankarshan.
主 Ramachandra 和 Lakshmana 就是 Vasudeva 和 Sankarshan。
And the other two brothers are Pradyumna and Aniruddha.
另外两个兄弟分别是 Pradyumna 和 Aniruddha。
So this should give you an idea of how important Vikreshwara Pandit is in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes.
所以呢，通过这样的介绍，给大家一个印象，来说明 Vakreshwara Pandita 在主体贪念 Mahaprabhu 的消时光当中是多么重要的一个人物。
And he was the guru of Gopal Guru Goswami.
Vakreshwara Pandita 正是 Gopala Guru Goswami 的灵性老师。
In Chaitanya Charitamrita it says that Lord Krishna personally entered Vikreshwara's body and caused him to dance in constant ecstasy for 72 continuous hours.
在 Chaitanya Charitamrita 永恒的主体贪念圣典当中这样描述的，这个 Krishna 亲自进入到 Vakreshwara 的体内，使他连续72小时一直在狂喜中不断的舞蹈。
I have noticed that the devotees in China like to dance in kirtan.
我注意到了，中国奉献者在 Kirtan 的时候特别喜欢舞蹈。
Not just the devotees, but when we have public programs, the public, they're very happy to get up and dance very happily.
不仅仅是中国奉献者，在做公开的活动的时候，我也发现中国人在 Kirtan 的时候，他们纷纷都从座位上起来，非常高兴的在 Kirtan 声当中，随着 Kirtan 而起舞。
However, the dancing of Vikreshwara Pandit was on another level.
然而 Vakreshwara Pandita 他的舞蹈是处在另一个层面上的。
He would dance in ecstasy of love of God.
完全沉浸在对至尊主的狂喜之爱当中舞蹈。
And for how long can you dance?
我们能够持续不断的舞蹈多长时间呢？
Can you dance for 6 hours?
你能一直不断的舞蹈6个小时吗？
Can you dance for 24 hours?
你能一直不断的舞蹈24个小时吗？
Can you dance for 48 hours?
你能一直舞蹈48个小时吗？
Can you dance for 64 hours? Can you dance for 72 hours?
你能一直不断的舞蹈64个小时，甚至72个小时吗？
Vikreshwara Pandit's dancing was a spontaneous exhibition of love of God where he would dance for 72 hours in ecstatic love of God.
Vakreshwara Pandita 一直处在狂喜之爱当中，一直不断的连续的舞蹈72个小时，他完全是出于对至尊能够守神自发的爱而翩翩起舞。
Sometimes Lord Chaitanya would sing while Vikreshwara Pandit would dance.
有的时候，主体贪恋 Mahaprabhu 在歌唱 ，Vakreshwara Pandita 随着他的歌声起舞。
Generally, the devotees would sing while Lord Chaitanya would dance, but he would sing for Vikreshwara Pandit while he would dance.
通常情况下是奉献者们一起 Kirtan， 然后是主体贪恋 Mahaprabhu 随着 Kirtan 声翩翩起舞，但是主体贪恋他为 Vakreshwara Pandita 的起舞而歌唱。
Lord Chaitanya said, if I have only one wing like you, but if I had another, certainly I would fly in the sky.
主体贪恋 Mahaprabhu 这样对 Vakreshwara Pandita 说到了：如果像你一样，我只有一只翅膀，一只翅膀，若还有另外一只，我一定要在空中展翅翱翔。
There's a plan to have a virtual visit to Vrindavan because of the pandemic. We can't go there.
我们现在有一个计划，因为疫情期间我们无法去到圣地本达文，因此我们打算在网上来做本达文的朝圣之旅。
During that Kartik visit to Vrindavan, I plan to take you all to Radhakund.
在阿提卡月关 及温达文的绕拜之旅，我打算把大家一起带到拉达昆。
And these are Vikreshwara Pandit's deities at Radhakund.
图片上大家看到的正是 Vikreshwara Pandit 所崇拜在拉达昆所崇拜的神像。
And he's a very special Krishna. He's playing two flutes at the same time.
而且这尊神像非常的特别，你们看 Krishna 在吹两只笛子。
His name is Radhakanta, and her name is Radha.
Krishna 在这个神像当中 ，Krishna 名字是 Radhakanta， 而 Radha 的名字是。
And to Radhakanta's right, or to our left, that's Lalita.
而在我们这尊神像 Radhakanta 的神像的左边就是 Lalita， 是我们的左边是 Lalita。
And next to her is Mahaprabhu.
而在 Lalita 这个左边是 Mahaprabhu。
We'll hear this name Radhakanta again very soon.
再次会听到 Radhakanta 这个名字。
In that little temple at Radhakund, there's a very beautiful painting of Radha, Krishna, and some gopis.
在 Radhakund 的这个神庙旁边，有一张非常非常美丽的 Krishna 还有其他 gopi 们的图片。
Here's a close-up of the face of Krishna, very beautiful.
但是其中的 Krishna 的映照非常非常的俊美。
Here's something else that we know about Vikreshwara Pandit's life.
我们现在来描述一下 Vikreshwara Pandit 他生平的另一个方面。
Not only he was at Radhakund, and not only he was in Puri, he was also in Mayapur.
Vikreshwara Pandit 他不仅曾经居住在 Radhakund 加格纳的 Puri， 他也居住在了Mayapur。
You see in the photograph here is a deity of Lord Varaha.
我们在这张图片上可以看到主 Varaha 的图片。
This deity of Varaha is the presiding deity of one of the 64 temples of Bhaktisiddhanta, the Gaudiya Math Temple.
主 Varaha 的这尊神像呢，是 Bhaktisiddhanta 所建立在印度所建立的64所Gaudiya Math 的神庙当中的一尊主要的神像。
The temple marks a place where a pastime with Lord Chaitanya connected with Devananda Pandit occurred.
而在这尊神像所在的地方呢，上演了主 Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 跟 Devananda Pandit 之间的一段逍遥时光。
As you see in the text above, he was a Smarta Brahmin, or a follower of study of the Vedas without Vaishnav qualification.
在这个神像的，我们就可以看到这张图片上面有一段文字，这段文字在他 Devananda Pandit 的文字
His place
有 smarta 这个词，这个词的意思是他没具有 Vaishnava 的这种心绪的人，他们沿袭着伟大经。
His place of residence was in Kulia, which is today's Navadvip.
当时所居住的地方名字叫 Kulia， 就是现在的 Navadvip。
As a Brahmin, although not a Vaishnav, he was somehow very attracted to Srimad Bhagavatam.
他作为 Brahmana 婆罗门，但是呢，他并不是一位那会儿并不是一位奉献者，但是他对圣典博伽瓦坛非常的受到吸引。
And regularly he would hold lectures and discourses on Srimad Bhagavatam without a proper Vaishnava understanding.
但是呢，他经常对圣典博伽瓦坛进行讲课，但是却没有正确的 Vaishnava 的奉献者的理解。
One day, when he was having such a discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Srivas Pandit passed by.
有一 行圣典博伽法坛讨论的时候，碰巧 Srivas Pandita 经过那里。
And Srivas Pandit, hearing the narrations of the topics of Krishna, felt ecstasy and love of God and fell to the ground unconscious.
Srivas Pandita 一听到关于 Krishna 的描述，他立刻陷入了极乐当中，陷入了对守神的狂喜之爱当中，倒在地上晕厥过去，失去了知觉。
There were guards in that assembly to keep order, and they didn't understand the ecstasy of Srivas.
在那里，当时那个地方有着这个护卫把守着，他们是为了维持秩序的，但是他们不理解 Srivas Pandit 他的这种完美的对守神之爱的境界。
They thought he was just creating a disturbance.
所以在那里的护卫认为 Srivas Pandit 在那里制造打扰。
So they just picked him up and carried him out of the assembly, and Devananda Pandit said nothing.
于是呢，这两个护卫就立刻把他抬了起来，把他扔到了另外一个地方。Devananda Pandit 他看到了这一幕，却一言不发。
Because Devananda wasn't a Vaishnav,
因为 Devananda 并不是奉献者，
and he didn't understand spiritual ecstasy.
而且他也不明白灵性的狂喜是什么。
But Srivas didn't mind.
但是 Srivas 一点都不在乎，
He didn't
不在意这一点。
he didn't say anything at all.
Srivas Pandit 一言不发，没有对此发表任何的。
Very humbly and quietly, he went back to his home and engaged in absorbed activities in relation to Krishna.
很快的 Srivas Pandit 就离开了那个地方，回到了他的家，去从事他的对 Krishna 的奉爱服务。
But Devananda had made a big offense against a very elevated Vaishnav.
却严重的冒犯了一位非常崇高的 Vaishnava 奉献者。
Fortunately for Devananda, he got the association of Akreshwara Pandit.
但是幸运的是 ，Devananda Pandit 他得到了Vakreshwara Pandit 的联谊。
One time, Akreshwara Pandit was in Navadvip or Kulia,
有一次 Vakreshwara Pandit 就在 Kulia Navadvip，
and as he was accustomed to dance in ecstasy and love of God, he was doing that just in the streets of Navadvip when Devananda came by.
那么就像他总是在处在这个对守神的狂喜之爱当中起舞，翩翩起舞。当时他正在街上这样翩翩起舞的时候 ，Devananda Pandit 刚好路过。
People had not seen that kind of ecstasy of love of God, so a big crowd formed around him.
因为当时的人们并没有见过这种处在对守神的狂喜之爱的这种景象，所以他们都把 Vakreshwara Pandit 团团围了起来，有很多的人群聚集在那里。
He was dancing high in the air, and tears were streaming from his eyes, and he was twirling around in ecstatic love of God.
完全展示出了对守神之爱的这些征兆。他腾空而起，在空中起舞，他有的时候泪如雨下，满地打滚等等，展示了对守神的这些征兆。
Devananda, being a respected elder, held his walking stick and had the crowd step back so that Vakreshwara can dance unobstructed.
那 Devananda 呢？他在年龄上是比较年长的，他当时手拄着拐棍，然后他用拐棍拨开了人群，来到了人群的最前面。这样呢，Vakreshwara Pandit 他没有受到打扰的，不断的舞蹈。
The Brahmin, Devananda Pandit, became very moved to see this ecstatic expression of love.
Devananda Pandit 看到了这一幕，他完全被 Vakreshwara Pandit 所展示出来的对守神的狂喜之爱所打动。
When the kirtan finished, Devananda Pandit invited Vikreshwar to come to his home for a meal.
当 Kirtan 结束的时候 Devananda Pandita 邀请 Vakeshwar Pandita 到他的家中共进晚餐。
Vikreshwar Pandit was a very gracious Vaishnava. He accepted the invitation.
Vakeshwar Pandita 他是一位非常非常彬彬有礼的 Vaishnava， 他接受了他的邀请。
And during that time, Vikreshwar Pandit started speaking the Vaishnava understanding of the message of Bhagavatam and Krishna's pastimes. And Devananda Pandit had never heard this before.
就在他们相遇的这段时间 Vakeshwar Pandit 开始讲述了关于圣典博伽瓦谈 Krishna 的消时光的 Vaishnava 奉献者的理解，而这一些讲解是 Devananda Pandit 以前从未听过的。
Gradually, over a period of time, Devananda Pandit became a student of Vikreshwara Pandit.
就这样，随着时间的流逝，慢慢的 Devananda Pandit 成为了 Vakeshwar Pandit 的学生。
And his mood shifted from being simply a scholar to becoming a Vaishnava.
就这样的，Devananda Pandit 他从一个实习的婆罗门的学者的这种心态当中，转移到了进程到了 Vaishnava 奉献者的心态当中。
This is an example of the kind of spiritual influence that Vikreshwara Pandit had on others.
这正是 Vakeshwar Pandit 对其他人的这种灵性的影响的一个写照。
So now let us go back to Jagannath Puri,
我们现在返回到 Jagannath Puri，
and we're going to focus again on Gopal Guru Goswami, his disciple.
我们现在来专注的讲一讲 Vakeshwar Pandit 门徒 Gopal Guru Goswami。
Gopal Guru was born in a Brahmin family in Orissa.
Gopal Guru 他是出生在 Orissa 的一位婆罗门家庭当中。
His birth name, as you see on the screen here, was Makaradhvaja.
他的出生的名儿起的名儿，正是如大家在荧幕上看到的是 Makaradhvaja Pandit。
Makaradhvaja was given the title Pandit because he was very scholarly.
因为他非常的有学识，所以呢，给了他这样的一个头衔 Pandit 的头衔 Makaradhvaja 被授予了 Pandit 学者的头衔。
He was just a little boy when he was living in Puri, and Lord Chaitanya affectionately would call him Gopal.
当他居住在 Puri 的时候，他那个时候他还是一个小孩子，而主起他那么哈帕普非怀着深情厚爱，给他起名了 Gopal。
During the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, many devotees had great attraction for the chanting of the holy name.
在主起他那么哈帕普临在的时候，那么在世的时候，有很多人受到唱诵的吸引。
One such Brahmin was so inclined to chanting that just naturally his tongue would always move and make the sound of the holy name.
那么有一位婆罗门，他是如此的热衷于唱诵，乃至于他一刻不停，他的舌头一刻不停的在动，总是唱诵着圣名。
One day, when he was heading to use the toilet, he was holding his tongue like you see, because he didn't want the chanting of the holy name to happen in a contaminated place like a toilet room.
有一天，这位婆罗门他要去如厕，去上厕所，在上厕所的路上，他把自己的舌头用手指这样领着，这样捏着，就像大家在图中所看到的那样。因为这位婆罗门他不想在受到污染，像厕所这样的不洁的地方念诵圣名。
Although Gopal was just a little boy, he understood the philosophy better than the Brahmin.
是他对圣名的理解完全超过了这位婆罗门的理解。
So Gopal scolded him.
于是 Gopala 看到了这个情形，他就指责了，他就批评了他。
Why are you doing like this?
你为什么这么做呢？
You know that the holy name is eternally pure.
您知道吗？圣名是永恒具有净化力的。
You're thinking that the toilet room is a contaminated place, but the holy name cannot be contaminated by anything.
你认为厕所是一个不干净的地方，受污染的地方，但是圣名在任何情况下、任何环境中都不会受到污染。
Since your tongue is inclined to chant the holy name always, there should be no exception. He scolded him.
所以Gopala就这样指责他，因为你的舌头一刻不穷的总是在那里念诵圣名。
When Lord Chaitanya heard this exchange with the Brahmana,
就在那Mahaprabhu 听到了 Gopala 对这个 Brahmana 的一番批评的言辞。
Lord Chaitanya said this is the function of Guru, so he should be called Gopal Guru.
而且他在Mahaprabhu 说，这正是一位灵性导师所要履行的职责，于是把他起名为 Gopala Guru。
And since that time, he was known as Gopal Guru.
自从那以后，他就以 Gopala Guru 而闻名于世。
One of the practices that Gopal Guru was accustomed to when chanting japa was a practice called Trataka.
Gopala Guru 他做的一个经常做的一个习练，就是他查卡。
Trataka.
他做的一个习练，念诵圣名的一个练习就是 Trataka。
Maybe some of you know from yoga schools, they sometimes teach meditation on a candle or some other object.
有的时候可能大家都听说过，在上外面上公开课、瑜伽课的时候，有的这个瑜伽老师教瑜伽学员烛光冥想或者其他种类的冥想。
That is a type of Trataka also.
Trataka 也是一种冥想。
But Gopal Guru wasn't interested in candle flames. He was interested in the holy name.
但是 Gopala Guru 他对烛光冥想一点都不感兴趣，他感兴趣的是圣名。
So it was his practice that he had the Hare Krishna mantra carved in stone, and he would chant his japa before a large stone, simply having his eyes follow the mantra as he was saying the name.
Gopala Guru 他做的这个练习是这样子的，他将 Hare Krishna 和 mantra 刻在了一个大石头里，然后当他持珠念诵的时候，他把这个刻有圣名的石头放在自己的眼前，他一边念诵，眼睛会一刻不停地看着这个圣名。
In China, you're all aware of the efforts made by Tamal Krishna Goswami under the order of Prabhupada to bring Krishna consciousness to China.
在中国，大家都非常的熟悉 Tamal Krishna Goswami 在 Srila Prabhupada 的命令之下，将 Krishna 之觉传播到了中国大陆。
One of his senior disciples, who became the president in the Houston temple, is named Shamsundar.
Tamal Krishna Goswami 的一位连长的门徒，他的名字叫 Shama Sundar， 在他 Shama Sundar Prabhu， 他现在是休斯顿的庙长。
Shamasundar Prabhu has great appreciation for Gopal Guru Goswami and this Trataka process. He speaks about it regularly.
Shama Sundar Prabhu 他非常的欣赏 Gopala Guru 他的这种习练的方式 ，Trataka 的这种习练的方式，并且他也经常谈论 Gopala Guru 的 Trataka 这种习练的方式。
Now we're going to focus for a moment on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself.
我们现在来花一点时间来讲一讲 Chaitanya Mahaprabhu。
Sometimes the place of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's residence is called Gambhira, and sometimes it's called the house of Kashi Mishra.
有的时候就是他那马哈帕布在加纳的土里所居住的地方被称为甘比拉，有的时候又被称为卡西米耍的家。
There's a nice history of how this happened.
有一段非常美妙的历史描述了这是如何发生的。
When Lord Chaitanya returned from his South India tour,
当主启他那马哈帕布从他的南印度之旅返回到加纳的土里的时候，
Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya requested the king to establish a proper residence.
萨巴东拉巴特查亚请求当地的国王为他建造一个合适的居住地。
The king thought immediately of the house of Kashi Mishra.
当时这位国王立刻就想到了卡西米耍的家。
Kashi Mishra was the Diksha guru of the king.
卡西米耍正是当时这位国王的地下洗涤的灵性老师。
And his house is not just a house, it's a big facility, and in that facility was the room where Lord Chaitanya stayed.
卡西米耍的家，那不仅仅是个家嘛，那是一个非常辉煌的一个很大的住宅。就在这个卡西米耍的家当中，主启他念马哈帕布有他的住所。
And here's the room.
这就是主启他念马哈帕布当时住的房间。
This is where Lord Chaitanya spent around 18 years just living in this little room.
主启他念马哈帕布在18年，在加纳的土里的18年当中，就是一直居住在这个小小的房间里。
They keep in a safe place some articles that were used by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pictured here.
我们在这里可以看到了这些庙宇里的服务的奉献者们，他们保留了就是他们马哈帕布当时所曾经用的这些生活用品。
In the middle is a clay pot that came from Vrindavan.
在中间呢，是就是他们马哈帕布他从文达文带来的一个泥罐子。
On our left are shoes that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally wore.
在我们的左边可以看到，这是就是他们马哈帕布他曾经穿过的鞋木屐。
And in that glass box, there's a cloth or a garment that was given to him by Sarup Damodar.
在这个图片上面，我们可以看到有一块布，或者是衣物，那是 Swarupa Damodar 送给主切堪纳马哈帕布的。
And commonly they're kept in this case that you see on the lower left.
我们大家可以看到，通常他们把主切堪纳马哈帕布曾经用过的这些生活用品放在了我们这张图片的左下角的那个小的和那个小的。
And this is the inside of Gambhira.
这就是 Gambhira 的里面的场景。
And here's another photograph of the pot and the shoes.
我们在这里可以看到，这是另一张主切堪纳马哈帕布所穿的鞋的图片。
When Gopal Guru was still a small boy,
当 Gopala Guru 还是一个小孩子的时候，
there was a Vaishnav named Abhiram Thakur that was visiting Jagannath Puri.
有一位 Vaishnava Pandita， 他的名字叫 Abhiram Thakur。那个时候他拜访Mayapur。
Abhiram Thakur, as you see on the right-hand side, he is one of the cowherd boys of Krishna in Krishna's pastimes.
我们在这个图片的左边看到的就是 Abhiram Thakur 的图片，而在 Krishna 的消时光当中，他是一位牧牛童。
That picture on the right is shown here. This is a B.G. Sharma, very nice painting of Krishna and the cowherd boys.
就是 B.G. Sharma， 这个图他画的这个图片，正说明了 Abhiram Thakur 是在 Krishna 的消逝光当中，他是一名牧牛童。
Abhiram Thakur had a very interesting reputation.
阿比茹阿玛塔库他有一个非常有意思的名声。
Abhiram Thakur sometimes wanted to test the Brahmanas to see if they were worshipping a Shalagram Shila or a stone.
阿比茹阿玛塔库他经常去测试或验证那些婆罗门们他们所崇拜的希拉到底是真正的希拉还是一块石头。
When he paid his obeisances before the Shila, if it wasn't a Shila, it would crack into many pieces.
如果阿比茹塔库他对那个希拉进行顶拜的时候，如果那个希拉分裂成好几半了，那么他就说明这个希拉并不是真正的希拉。
Similarly, when Abhiram Thakur heard of an exalted Vaishnav, he would come to pay obeisances.
同样的，阿比茹塔库当他听到了有多么崇高的奉献者的时候，他去到这样崇高的奉献者面前去顶拜。
And if they were impostors, they would immediately die.
如果这个所谓的崇高奉献者是个冒牌货的话，当阿比茹塔库一向这样的冒牌货一顶拜，这个冒牌货就会死去。
The power of Abhiram Thakur was well known, and everyone was afraid of him.
所以阿比茹塔库的力量是远近闻名的，因此当时每一个人都非常的害怕他。
When Abhiram Thakur heard of the exalted nature of this little boy, Gopal Guru, he wanted to come pay his obeisances.
当阿比茹塔库听闻到了古鲁这位小男孩说到他是如此崇高的奉献者的时候，他立刻来到这个小男孩面前向他顶拜。
When Gopal Guru heard that Abhiram Thakur is coming, he became very afraid and he ran to Lord Chaitanya and begged for his protection.
当古鲁这个小男孩一听到阿比茹塔库要前来向他顶拜，他立刻害怕的不得了，然后跑到了就去他那马哈帕布那里去求取庇护，求取保护。
Lord Chaitanya was very affectionate upon the little boy, and he placed his foot, his heel, on his forehead. It made that mark on his forehead, his tilak mark.
而且他那马哈帕布非常深爱着古鲁这个小男孩，于是他立刻抬起了自己的足的后跟，然后在古鲁的前额上印上了他的莲花足印。
When Abhiram Thakur came, Gopal Guru was seated on Lord Chaitanya's lap and nothing happened.
阿比茹塔库来追着紧追不舍，来到了这切他那马哈帕布和古鲁的面前，看到古鲁正坐在切他那马哈帕布的腿上的时候，他立刻一言不发的就一言不发。
Those of you who have been to Puri, you'll recognize this Gambhira Hall.
大家曾经去过加纳普里的奉献者们，你们看这个图片，一下子就能认出来，这是Gambhira的大厅，Gambhira神庙的大厅。
That arch-shaped wooden structure is used at the time of the swing festival or Julon Yatra.
Could you
Yes. That arch-shaped wooden structure is used during the swing festival or Julon Yatra.
我们在图片上看到的这个木质的这个装饰物，就是用来秋千节的时候给神像用的。
A swing is suspended from that arch.
那这个秋千呢，就悬在了这个拱门上。
The deities are taken from the altar, which is in this hall, placed on the swing, and the deities go for a pleasure ride.
那 神像放在秋千上，然后拉到神庙外面去过秋千节。
Here's the other side of the hall, nicely decorated.
我们再可以看到Gambhira大厅的另旁边，可以看到这里装饰的非常的美丽。
Within that hall is an altar,
在这个大厅里面有一座神坛，
and on the altar is the deity of Sri Radhakanta.
在神坛上正是须达的康塔神像。
There's some interesting history behind the deity.
在这尊神像的背后有一段非常有意思的历史。
Before the time of Lord Chaitanya,
在主水丹尼尔降临于世之前，
the previous king was named King Purushottam Dev.
在以前的上一任国王的名字叫普鲁舍特曼。
When it was time for the marriage of King Prataparudra, or the son of Purushottam Dev, there was a suggestion that the daughter of the king of Kashi, the daughter of the king of Kanchi, that the daughter and his son would marry.
那当普鲁舍特曼 Dave 那个时候，正是他的儿子普鲁舍特曼 Dave 这位国王他的儿子。
So the
Prataparudra 要正是他的成婚的年龄。那个时候他们那个时候是准备康熙的这个地方的公主嫁给 Prataparudra 他的儿子。
The marriage between the daughter of one king and the son of another king was a big event.
那么一位国王的女儿嫁给另一位国王的儿子，这可是一件大事儿。
So the king of Kanchi came to Puri during the Rath Yatra time.
于是康熙这个地方的国王在禅车节期间去到了加格纳的普里。
He wanted to meet the young man who would marry his daughter.
因为他想在结婚之前去见一见将要迎娶他女儿的这位年轻人。
However, the king of Kanchi saw Prataparudra sweeping the street in front of Lord Jagannath as he was moving towards the altar, towards the cart.
但是这位康熙的国王，他当时看到在禅车节举行期间，帕特帕鲁扎在禅车的神像面前扫地。
He didn't say anything, but when he returned to Kanchi, he sent a message back to Purushottam Dev, my daughter's not going to marry a street sweeper.
他当时一言不发，然后当他离开了加格纳的普里，回到了康熙之后，他就传递给普鲁舍特曼 Dave 国王这样的信息，说道：“我的女儿不会嫁给你的儿子的。”
Purushottama felt that Lord Jagannath was being insulted.
普鲁舍特曼 Dave 国王他感到主加格纳他受到了侮辱，
So he gathered up his whole army and went charging to the city of Kanchi to wage battle against the king for the insult of Lord Jagannath.
所以国王普鲁舍特曼 Dave 他集结了他所有的军队，向康熙进发，要向康熙的国王发起总攻，因为他认为康熙的国王侮辱了主加格纳。
Much to his surprise, the king of Kanchi was victorious and King Purushottam had to retreat back to Puri.
那令普鲁舍特曼 Dave 非常吃一惊的是，康熙的国王居然战胜了他们，于是国王普鲁舍特曼 Dave 不得带着他的军队撤退，返回到了加格纳的普里。
Purushottam Dev went before Lord Jagannath and offered many, many prayers. How was this possible? That I went to protect your honor and I was defeated. How did that happen?
普鲁舍特曼 Dave 国王他去到加格纳特神像的面前，一次又一次的进献祷 说到了，这怎么可能呢？我为了捍卫您的名誉，去攻打康熙的国王，然后我居然被他打败了，这怎么可能呢？
When the king consulted his ministers, they asked him a question.
当这位国王普鲁舍特玛对国王想咨询他的大臣的时候，他的大臣是这样说到的。
Before taking your armies to defend Jagannath's honor, did you take Lord Jagannath's permission?
当你集结你的军队去发起进攻，捍卫主加格纳塔的名誉的时候，之前你得到了主加格纳塔神像的允许了没有啊？
Immediately, Purushottam Dev understood his mistake.
立刻普鲁舍特玛对意识到了自己犯下的错误，
So he went to the temple and offered many, many prayers to Lord Jagannath.
于是他返回到神庙，向主加格纳塔一次又一次的进献祷文祈祷。
And then he got his army and went again to challenge the king of Kanchi.
在这之后，他又集结他的军队，向康熙的国王再一次发起了总进攻。
On their way, they stopped at one shop to get some supplies.
在途中，他们在一个店铺里停了下来，去获得一些补给。
And the merchant immediately supplied everything that they wanted without any price.
而这个商人呢，立刻他没有要国王的一分钱，就给予了，就为国王提供了他们想要的一切。
So the representatives of the king that were doing the purchasing, they asked, why are you not charging us anything?
这个代表国王的这个使臣，他没有付出一分钱就买到了所有的这些东西，然后国王就问：你为什么不付钱呢？
The merchant was also surprised. He said, I've already received payment.
这个使节就问这位商人说：你为什么不收钱呢？不收我们一分钱呢？这个商人他也说道：我非常的惊讶，实际上我已经得到了我的已经得到了相应的付款。
There were two of your soldiers, one black and one white, that came through, and they gave this payment to me and said, give everything that the king of Puri needs for his army.
因为在此之前，你的两位士兵，一位是白皮肤的，一位是黑皮肤的，曾经来到我这里说道：如果国王前来想从你这里买到任何的补给，你都毫不犹豫的全都给予他们，而且他们俩给了我相应的付款。
The merchant then produced a jewel and said, this was my payment.
然后那个商人就拿出了一颗宝石，说到了这就是当时那两个人付给我的钱。
When King Purushottam Dev was informed, he went to see the jewel and he recognized that was a jewel that I gave to Lord Jagannath long ago.
然后当舍特玛国王他听闻了这件事情之后，就立刻来到现场。当他一看到这个宝石的时候，他立刻认出来了，这是我曾经献给主加格纳的神像的宝石。
Then he knew Jagannath and Baladev were going to ensure his victory because he went and took their blessings.
于是他立刻就了解到了，这正是主加格纳和巴拉蒂夫他们两人，他已经获得了主加格纳和巴拉蒂夫的祝福，他肯定在这场战斗当中得开启胜。
King Purushottam Dev defeated the king of Kanchi in battle.
在战场上，普鲁舍特玛队伍战胜了康熙的国王。
The daughter of the king of Kanchi was given in marriage to his son Prataparudra.
后来，康熙的国王将自己的女儿嫁给了普鲁舍特玛队伍国王的儿子帕特帕鲁者。
In addition, King Purushottam Dev received from the Kanchi king many deities, including this deity that you see of Radhakanta.
王那里也得到了很多的神像，其中就包括了这一尊 Radhakanta 神像。
These multiple deities were placed inside the Jagannath temple.
这尊非常著名的神像放置于了加纳特神庙当中。
Sometime later, the guru of King Prataparudra, named Kashi Mishra, requested this particular deity that you see a photograph of for his personal worship.
一段时间之后，说成了这个国王的灵性导师卡西米什，他向国王发出请求把这尊神像送给他，他自己亲自来崇拜这尊神像 Radhakanta 神像，正是大家在这个荧幕上看到的这尊神像。
During Kashi Mishra's lifetime, there was only Radhakanta, the Krishna deity that you see here.
在卡西米什的有生之年当中，他只有 Radhakanta 这一尊神像，也就是我们在荧幕上看到的这一尊神像，当时是没有 Radha 的神像的。
Because Kashi Mishra had no sons, he gave the worship of the deity to Gopal Guru.
因为卡西米什他没有儿子，后来他将这尊神像转交给了 Gopal Guru 继续崇拜。
During the time of Gopal Guru, some additional deities were installed.
在 Gopal Guru 有生之年当中，一些其他的神像被安放在这个神坛上。
On Radhakanta's left is Radha,
在 Radhakanta 这尊神像的我们的右边是 Radha，
and on Radhakanta's right, you'll see Lalita.
在 Radhakanta 的左边是 Radha， 在 Radhakanta 的右边是 Lalita。
And there's also a deity of Mahaprabhu dancing.
我们在图片上也可以看到 Mahaprabhu 起舞的神像。
And over to the other side, there are some gopis.
而在旁边还可以看到有一些狗屁的神像。
Today, if you visit Jagannath Puri at the house of Kashi Mishra, this is the altar that you'll see.
如果以后大家去到加纳的普里朝圣的，然后去到卡西米什的家中去朝圣的时候，就能够看到这个神坛以及这些神像。
That small deity on our left, or the deity's right, is Lord Nityananda.
在我们的 left 左边，在神像的右边，这个是主尼天南的神像。
And look at the photograph on the far right. On the other side of the deities, there's additional deities.
我们可以看到，在这个神坛的旁边，左边神坛的左边，也就是我们的右手边旁边，有很多其他的神像。
Here's another photograph of the Radhakanta.
这是Radhakanta神像的另一张照片。
Here's a close-up of the two.
这是 Radhakanta 的近照。
And to the side, there are many other deities.
在这个神坛的左边还有很多其他的神像。
A very interesting thing happened at the end of Gopal Guru's life.
有一件非常有意思的事情发生在了 Gopal Guru 的晚年。
He made a last-minute arrangement before his departure to turn the deity and the whole residential facility over to his principal disciple, Dyanancandra.
Gopal Guru 在他隐居之前，背后做出了一个安排，那就是他所崇拜的 Radhakanta 神像以及他所居住的这个地方，全都转交给了他的主要的一个门徒，叫 Dyanancandra Goswami。
When Gopal Guru had left his body, the body was taken to this particular place by the shore of the sea.
当 Gopala Guru 隐迹离开躯体之后，他的身体被带到了这个特殊的地方，这个地方就在海边。
The gate that you see there is called Svarga Dwara, or the gate to heaven.
这个地方被称为 Swarga Dwara。这个 Swarga Dwara 的字面意思是天堂之门。
It's a cremation, on the other side is a cremation place where bodies are burned before the ashes are thrown into the sea.
在另一边呢，我们可以看到是火化场。当这个身体在火化场被火化之后，然后会把骨灰撒到海里。
The local government took over the property and the worship of the deity right while this funeral ceremony was taking place because the proper procedures weren't followed.
那么当地的政府呢，就接管了这个地产。
Yeah. There's a procedure in Indian government where conveyance of property from one to another is done in a proper way. And this wasn't done with the house of Kashi Misra and the deity.
那么当时呢，就是卡西米什他的这个居住的地方，政府他们想接管这个地方来看这个卡西米什的这个家是否按照正确的程序被继承。
So while the funeral is going on, the government took over the property.
那么当时的政府呢，他们想把这个地方占为政府的这个地产，于是就在焚化这个Gopala Guru 的尸体的时候，在焚化的过程当中，政府来了，将这个地方
So his disciple
他们所有。
fell by the body of Gopal Guru and started crying and praying, please help me. This is a very difficult situation.
因为当时政府长期的把这个地方将为他们所有，于是他的这位门徒，我们还念
Dyanancandra.
他的门徒，这个主要的门徒Dyanancandra，于是他在这个他的身体旁边，Gopala Guru 的身体旁边，在那里痛哭起来，求助，帮帮我吧。
So Gopal Guru came back to life. He got up and went back to the house of Kashi Mishra and he settled all the documents for proper conveyance.
就在那个时候，Gopala Guru 他起死回生了，然后他径直回到了卡西米什的家中，并且签下了这个政府的相关的文件，然后正式的将这个房产继承给了他的门徒。
It's not clear how long he stayed after that event, but eventually he died and they had the funeral here.
那么当时呢，也并不知道那个时候多长时间，这个就是他从这个火葬场里回来，然后回到那里，这个时间段是多长？当时他是在这个地方焚化了他的身体是在这个地方焚化的。
1 year later,
1年之后，
some devotees came from Vrindavan to attend the Jagannath Rath Yatra festival.
有一些从文达文来的奉献者来将他们铺以参加的亚茶坦彻节。
And when they returned to Vrindavan, they saw Gopal Guru at Vangshiva chanting japa.
当他们返回文达文的过程当中的时候，他们看见 Gopala Guru 在 Vangsivata 念诵来着。
They immediately sent a messenger to his disciple Dyanancandra to inform him Gopal Guru was up here chanting japa.
然后他们立刻派信使去告诉 Gopala Guru 的门徒 Dyanancandra， 说道：“你的离心导师 Gopala Guru 在 Vangsivata 念诵呢。”
And immediately Dyanancandra went as fast as he could to Vrindavan, saw Gopal Guru, and requested, Gopal Guru, let me stay here with you.
然后，迪亚纳强者一听到这件事情，一听到这个消息之后，他马不停蹄的就赶到了文达本，去到了王西瓦塔，去请求沟帕咕噜，说到了，请让我跟你在一起吧。
Gopal Guru said, you have your service. You have to take care of Radhakanta's worship. Go back immediately.
沟帕咕噜对他说的，你有你的服务，你需要去照顾、崇拜去拉达康的神像，所以请赶紧回到加纳普里吧。
But if you're feeling separation from me, in that same hall where the deity is, you can establish my murti.
如果你实在忍受不了与我的分离之情，那么你就在这个神坛里面去设下我的一个小小的母体塑像，来消除你的这种分离之情。
He followed his guru's order, and even today there is this murti of Gopal Guru in that hall.
于是他按照他的灵性导师的训示，就这样建立了他的咕噜的这尊母体神像，然后一直到现在，他的灵性导师的母体塑像一直在这里被得以崇拜。
Just as Gopal Guru was very absorbed in the chanting of the holy name, so was his disciple.
就像沟帕咕噜，他非常的确信会神的沉浸在加帕念诵圣名当中，他的门徒也是这样。
And he wrote a book, which you see pictured here.
并且他的门徒写了这本书，就是图片上所看到的这本书。
Padati means a manual that tells you how to do things. Archana means deity worship. And Gora Govinda indicates Lord Chaitanya and Krishna. This is a manual that teaches the type of deity worship that Swarup Damodar did and taught to Vakreshwar Pandit and Gopal Guru, and a book about it was written by his disciple.
Goswami 他所崇拜神像的这些规则，而 Svarupa 又将这些崇拜神像的这些原则，继承给了 Pakrishra Pandit。Pakrishra Pandit 又继承给了他的门徒，然后他的门徒又继承给了他的门徒 Dyanancandra。
This very special kind of deity worship, or any deity worship, involves mantra.
而这种特殊的崇拜的方式，或者是任何一种崇拜神像的方式，都跟 mantra 息息相关。
And this is a verse in 3 different languages, Sanskrit, English, and Chinese. One of the verses that describes mantra meditation that we do every day.
我们在这张图片上可以看到这首曼陀罗通过三种文字呈现出来，梵文、英文还有中文。而这首曼陀罗正是描述了我们应该，正是描述了念诵圣名所应该到达的一种境界。
It's very simple, 4 parts.
这一首 mantra 非常的简单，分成了4个部分。
The mantra firmly situated in the mind.
曼陀罗牢固的处在心意里，
The mind firmly situated in the mantra.
心意牢固的处在曼陀罗当中。
Such a seamless connection of the mind and mantra
心意和曼陀罗如此严丝合缝的连在一起，
is the characteristic of ideal japa.
便是理想或完美的 japa 的特征。
You see in the Sanskrit, japa lakshana, the characteristic of ideal japa.
你们在这个范文当中可以看到这句话 japa lakshana 理想的 japa 的特征。
This is one of the main reasons why I chose this topic for this evening's class.
这就是我为今天晚上的课特意选择来进行这个话题的讲解的主要原因。
I request Surabhi to circulate to all of you this particular slide so you can try to improve your chanting of japa this way.
我请苏若比，你将尤其是将这个幻灯片这句话发给大家进行传阅，这样呢能够帮助大家来提高japa的质量。
Now there's further details of how this is achieved, but this is the mind situated firmly in the mantra.
当然了，还有具体的步骤，怎么样逐渐的到达这种完美的理想的japa的境界当中。这里面说到了曼陀罗牢固的处在心意当中。
So now you have those two lessons about chanting your japa every day. One is this Trataka method described earlier, and this which you see on the screen just now.
所以现在呢，大家关于念诵圣名获得了2个教导，一个教导呢就是刚才我们说到的 Trataka 这样的曼陀罗念诵冥想的方式，另一个就是现在在荧幕上看到的这首曼陀罗的含义。
We now have 20 minutes. There's some time for discussion. If you can switch to the Zoom picture.
我们现在还有20分钟的提问时间。
If you can let them know they can send questions into the chat box or whatever they do.
大家现在可以把问题放在这个聊天框里，或者是你们也可以打开麦。 大家把问题传到这个聊天室里哈。Usually take a long time to send the first question.
I'm patient.
Maharaj, may I ask you a question?
Yeah, say it in Chinese first. Can you
Yes.
move to the Zoom screen? Do you know how to do that?
那我想问的一个问题是，心意的本性总是摇晃不定的，在这里面说到了曼陀罗牢固的处在心意当中。我想问的问题是，怎么能够让曼陀罗牢固的处在摇晃不定的心意当中？ Maharaj, my question relates to the mind. So the nature of the mind is flickering. So and this mantra is said that the mantra firmly situated in the mind. So my question is that how make the mantra firmly situated in the mind, which later is flickering?
By practice.
我们还是说通过不断的练习。
The flickering condition is the material condition.
心意摇晃不定，这是心意的一种物质受条件限制的一种状态。
And the fixed condition is the spiritual condition.
而心意稳定的状态是灵性的状态。
So you move the mind to the spiritual position, and the flickering tendency will change.
所以我们要把心意去转移到是心 OK， 所以我们要将心意转移到要使心意转移到处在灵性的状态当中，这样呢，心意的这种摇晃不定的倾向就会被去除掉。Yes, good night. Thank you for your answering. Now there's several questions in the chat box. Tata Misra Thakur, Hare Krishna 顶拜咕噜，感恩翻译。请问我们在念诵时，也可以一边看着 Hare Krishna Mahamantra 一边念诵吗？这样有助于提升念诵的质量吗？ Hare Krishna, my obeisances to Guru Maharaj. And my question that when we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra on Japa, and we see Hare Krishna Mahamantra at the same time chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra on Japa, so can this way help us to improve the quality of our chanting?
It can. You can get distracted too. The potential is there, but it's not a guarantee.
一边看着 Hare Krishna Mahamantra 一边念诵，这是可以有助于提升我们的加帕的念诵的质量，但与此同时也有这种分心的这种潜力的，也有分心的可能。但是呢，这种一边看着 Hare Krishna Mahamantra 一边念诵，也能够提升我们的念诵的质量。
This technique is not something that Prabhupada taught us.
这种念诵的这种技巧方式呢，并不是他们教授给我们的。
But it is a technique that's in our line.
但是这种技术呢，这种念诵的技术呢，是在我们的这个使徒传系当中有的。
So you can see if it helps you or if you just become more distracted.
所以如果你看着 Hare Krishna Mahamantra 能够帮助你提升这个念诵的质量的话，那么你可以一边看着一边念。如果让你分心了，那你就不用看。
The essence of japa is sound, and the essence of the practice of chanting japa is hearing that sound.
念诵的精髓是这个 Hare Krishna Mahamantra 的音正，而我们这个聆听是我们在念诵过程当中，聆听也是这个念诵的一个精髓。
Whatever helps you hear the sound, you do that.
所以无论有什么样的方式能够有助于你去专注的聆听所念诵的 Hare Krishna Mahamantra 这个音正，你都可以使用。
Next.
Yes, the next question from Shima, 顶拜 Maharaj 翻译 Hare Krishna. Krishna 为什么吹两只笛子呢？ Oh, here Shima Mataji asked a question that why that the deity of Dyanancandra play two flutes.
He's playful. You can't do that, but Krishna can.
我们做不到这一点，但是 Krishna 能做到。
Why only two?
为什么只有两只呢？
But generally he just has one.
为什么？通常情况下 ，Krishna 是吹一只笛子的。May I continue the question?
Please continue. Next.
那我对虚满呢自己的这个问题继续问一个问题哈，那这个背后有什么消时光呢 ？So Maharaj, may I ask you that is there any pastimes behind why she Dyanancandra play two flutes?
That's the same question. There's no pastime behind it. He just likes to sometimes.
那么在这尊神像，它吹两只笛子的背后，没有什么特别的消时光，就是自娱自乐，好玩，所以吹两只笛子。Yeah, good night. Next question. Vedavati Mataji, 顶拜 Maharaj 为什么在所有的奉爱服务当中，念诵最难以专注下来呢？感恩 From our basis to Maharaj. So among all the devotional service, why chanting Hare Krishna chanting is the most why it is the most difficult thing to attentive in chanting. Hare Krishna, Maharaj?
I'm thinking.
Oh, sorry.
One answer is the mind is attracted to material things.
一个主要的原因呢，一方面主要的原因是心意很容易被物质的事情所吸引。
And there's nothing material about the mantra.
而 mantra 是跟这个一点都不是物质的，根本就不是物质的。
Instead of being attentive to the mantra, our mind wants to go to something to be the enjoyer of and to plan and all of that. So there's nothing, there's no material reciprocation with chanting of the holy name, so the mind gets restless and distracted.
这个心意为什么不能够专注这个念诵呢？圣名呢？那是因为心意它的倾向就是很容易被物质的计划呀、物质的享乐所吸引，而在念诵的过程当中根本就没有这种物质的回应，所以心意很容易被物质的东西所吸引走。
The medicine is very powerful and very pure.
而这个药剂既强有力，very powerful at the same time.
Pure.
这个药剂呢，它与此同时，它不仅强有力，而且是非常纯净的。
And our mind is weak and impure. So we're distracted.
而我们的心意呢是非常脆弱的，而且是不纯净的，所以呢很容易分心。
Next.
Yes, next question from Rukmini Devidasi Mataji. 感恩亲爱的 Gurudeva 和翻译，今天是一年当中最大的戒时，我们通过戒时可以稳定我们的心意吗？ Thank you very much, Gurudev. So today is the biggest Ekadasi day. So by doing fasting, can help us to make our mind steady.
Yes, and purify the senses.
通过戒时可以帮助稳定我们的心意，也可以净化我们的感官。
Just make sure to get the best benefit that you offer your heart this austerity that you've undergone for the pleasure of Krishna.
那么，请你尽自己最大的努力，从这样的戒时当中获得最大的利益，那就是将自己的心完全交给 Krishna。
Next.
Yes. The next question from 高静，顶戴 Guru 顶的翻译，我的念诵总是不能专注，这是我的一大困扰，该怎么办呢？念诵的时候就是不能专注，但自己会偶尔 有艰难的坚持着念诵，明知道不能冒犯的念诵，但就是不能专注，太痛苦了。My business is too good in my head, so when I chant the holy name, I always inattentive. This is the biggest disturbance for me. So what to do? When I chant, I really cannot be attentive, and just occasionally I struggle to insist to continue my chanting, and I know that we cannot chant the holy name by making offense. So, but at the same time, I cannot be attentively. This is painful for me.
Your situation is the same as every one of us.
你现在的这种感受和处境，跟我们大家每个人都是一样的。
Here's an important understanding. Listen carefully.
这里有一个非常非常重要的一个理解，所以请仔细听好。
If you are striving to be attentive, it's not offensive chanting.
如果你努力的去做到专注的念诵，这并不是念诵的，并不是对念诵圣名的一个冒犯。
Second point is don't say, I can't. You can say, I struggle. But to say I can't means there's something more powerful than Krishna, which isn't true.
还有一点就是不要再说我不能，而可以这样去说，我挣扎着，或者是我艰难的去做。如果说我不能的话，那就言外之意，还有一种力量，甚至比 Krishna 还要强大的。
If you rely upon Krishna, then you'll be successful. If you try to do on your own effort, you will not be successful.
如果你完全去依靠 Krishna 的话，那么你就能够成功的做到专注的念诵。如果只是依靠自己的努力的话，那肯定是做不到的。
So don't say can't.
所以不要再说我不能。
Say, I need to depend more on Krishna and I need to make a more sincere effort over time, then I will be successful.
也应该这样去说，我努力的去依靠 Krishna，与此同时，我努力的做出更多真诚的努力，如此就能够最终就能够获得成功。
Next.
Yes, right. Next question from 冒险王。顶拜咕噜 Gopala Guru 的门徒的现在与我们是不是不在一个传系分支呢？ I offer my obeisance to Guru Maharaj. So my question is that the current disciples of Gopala Guru, are they in the same parampara as we are in?
Yes.
是的。门徒的现在的门徒是跟我们处在一个传系当中。
It's just a different branch of the same tree.
但是呢，是处在这个一个传系的不同的分支，但是这个树是一样的。
Next.
The next question from Rukmini Mataji. 听到 Gopala Guru 的特殊念诵的消时光，我们可以得到什么样的启示呢？Her question is that after hearing the pastimes, the special pastime of Gopala Guru, what kind of instruction or enlightenment we can get from these special pastimes?
I started the class this evening with explaining my reason for speaking on this topic.
我在讲课一开始就讲到了我最近选择这个话题的主要原因。
There are two teachings related to the chanting of the holy name that can especially benefit you.
这段消时光有2个的教导 有2个主要的教导，这2个主要的教导都跟念诵息息相关，我们能够从中受到极大的裨益。
A second appreciation is how exalted are these devotees of Lord Chaitanya.
而另一个启示呢，就是我们能够从中了解到主Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 的这些同游是多么的崇高。
In addition to their exalted pastimes, they're very compassionate and they want to give to you and to all of us the goal of life. We just have to be eager to receive their mercy.
除了这些消时光说明了主Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 的这些同游们如此的崇高，另外这些同游们他们又是如此心怀怜悯，把这些重要的教导传递给我们，让我们从中受益。而我们要做的是敞开心扉去接受这些教导。
That's the second practical benefit you can get from the time we've just spent together this evening.
这就是我们今天晚上一起欢度的这段时光当中所得到的另外的一个相关的重要的教导，能够裨益我们，裨益你，裨益我们所有大家。
Look up to these exalted souls, request of them in your prayers their descending mercy, so you can become like them.
所以我们要去崇拜、敬仰这些崇高的奉献者们，向他们深深的致以敬意和祈祷，祈祷他们的仁慈能够降临到我们身上，从中得到他们的这样的重要的教诲，从中得到巨大的裨益。
You can learn a lesson if you go to do some service. Place your head before the feet of Krishna and ask for his mercy to be successful in your service. Don't just run off and do your service.
我们在做服务之前，请将我们的头顶拜在 Krishna 的莲花足下，祈求他的祝福和仁慈，让我去祝福我们从事每一项服务，而不是不加思索的就去做，而应该首先在做每一项服务之前，向主 Krishna 的莲花足祈求他的仁慈。
Here's another message.
还有另外一个讯息。
When you're given a service by your spiritual master, fix your mind in carrying out that service somehow.
还有，当你从灵性导师那里获得了一项服务的时候，那么就应该将这项服务置于你的头顶，全身心的投入到这项服务当中。
Next.
Yes. Next question from 高静。平时大部分的时间的念诵是不专注的，这跟物质的欲望有关系吗？ So, in the regular time, most of our japa is inattentive. So this has any connection with our material desires?
Yes.
是的，平时大部分的时间的念诵不专注，这跟我们的物质的愿望是有关系的。
We're conditioned souls.
我们是受条件制约的灵魂。
Conditioned souls have material desires and they're distracted by those material desires.
受条件制约的灵魂有物质的欲望，并且被这些物质的欲望分心。
Next.
Yes. Next question from Radhika Priya Mataji. 请问 Maharaj 是否我们的心意处在灵性的状态，心意就能从圣明的念诵当中得到回应呢？使心意处在灵性的状态当中是怎样的状态呢？ Maharaj, my question is that if our mind situated in the spiritual state, so in that state, the mind can get the reciprocation from the chanting of the Hari name.
That's the plan. And yes, the answer is yes.
是的，这就是我们的打算，我们的计划。当心意处在灵性的状态当中的时候，心意就能从圣明的念诵当中得到回应。So the second question that in order to make the mind situated in the spiritual state. So what kind of that state could you describe?
What is that state like? Is there a question? What's it like when you're in that state?
Like?
What's it like?
Yes.
You can read Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 20 through 23, and there's a very detailed explanation of what it's like.
那你关于这个问题呢，是心意处在灵性状态是怎样的状态？关于这个问题的回答，你可以去阅读一下《薄伽梵歌》第6章第22到23节，就能够了解到了心意处在灵性的状态是什么样的。
And the purport is very nice also.
而且呢，这个目的也是非常美妙的。
Next.
Oh, go ahead. So the host said that now the time is up.
Okay,
So
well then,
if,
Hare Krishna.
so if anybody have any other questions,
That's it.
okay.
Hare Krishna. And
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much.
leave.
非常感谢大家的聆听和美好的提问，也感谢主持人美好的服务。Hare Krishna.
Recording stopped.